Disney's Grand Floridian has never really felt like it was speaking my Disney language. I've always admired it. I've just never been sure it was the best fit for me.
Everyone's always asking what's the best resort at Disney World. Honestly, I don't think that there is one. I think there's a best resort for the kind of trip that you're trying to have. And I've always been interested in the Grand Floridian. I've always admired it, but I've never connected with it emotionally the same way I do naturally with places like the Polynesian. So this trip is not about whether the Grand Floridian is beautiful. We all know that it is. I want to find out what kind of trip this resort actually creates for guests and if it can win me over.
And thank you so much to DVC Rental Store for sponsoring this video. One of the reasons I wanted to do this Magic Kingdom resort series this way is because these resorts are very expensive and renting DVC points can really change the math on staying somewhere like this. So later in the video, I'll talk about this room category, what surprised me about it, and why it may make sense for a certain kind of Disney trip. Walking in, the Grand Floridian is exactly what you think it's going to be. Beautiful, polished, formal in a way that very few places still commit to. There's a live pianist in the lobby. The whole thing has this old vacation society energy, like a place that has always known exactly what it is and has absolutely no interest in apologizing for it. I found it genuinely interesting. I just wasn't sure whether interesting was going to become something warmer. One of the first things I did was wander over to the Villas building, and I noticed right away that it had a completely different feel from the main lot. It's quieter, smaller, more intimate, and considerably more whimsical than I expected. There are penguin waiters frozen mid-service in the fountain, and Mary Poppins' umbrella is the pointer on the elevator panel. I filed those little details away as charming, but I hadn't yet figured out what to make of them. After we got into the room, we did what any reasonable person would do in the middle of the afternoon at the Grand Floridian. We went and got cocktails. The Enchanted Rose is on the second floor, the same level you arrive on if you come in from the Monorail. And I want to be honest with you, I was not prepared for how beautiful this space is. It is a Beauty and the Beast inspired bar, which sounds like it could go very wrong, and instead goes completely right. There are actually 4 distinct spaces. The main bar under Belle's golden chandelier, a formal library with French furnishings, a whimsical garden room representing the forest around Beast's castle, and an outdoor porch overlooking the resort grounds. It's warm and detailed and a little dramatic in the best possible way. The kind of place that makes you want to sit there longer than you planned. We got cocktails and some charcuterie and just settled in for a bit. And I think that's exactly where the Grand Floridian started working on me for the first time. Not the lobby, not the chandeliers, a mid-afternoon glass of wine and a gorgeous bar with nowhere to be. The cocktails are not cheap. I want to be clear about that. But the experience being in that room in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon felt like exactly the kind of thing this resort is designed for. When I first walked in, I'll be honest, my first reaction was basically, is this what I booked? No kitchenette, no full villa layout, 2 queen beds and a sleeper sofa, which is not what you typically picture when you think Grand Floridian DVC villa. But here's the thing, once I settled in, the room started making a lot of practical sense. 2 queen beds plus the 5th sleeper works really well for families. There's a beverage cooler and a coffee and tea station, so you're not completely without options for an in-room morning. And what you're actually paying for isn't the room, it's everything right outside it.
One thing I didn't realize before arriving here is that these new resort studios at Big Pine Key are much more like a traditional hotel room than a standard DVC villa. But honestly, the more I settled into it, I realized that these are a great room for someone that's going to spend their time enjoying the resort or spend a lot of time at the park. So I guess I would say these are more like an elevated hotel room versus a villa feel.
Now that you've seen what a resort studio looks like, here's how it fits into the larger picture, because the Grand Floridian DVC has more options than most people realize. The other studio option is the deluxe studio in the original Villas building. That's the one with the full kitchenette, a sink, a proper mini fridge, a coffee maker, plus a queen bed, a Murphy bed, and a pull-down bunk. It also has a split bathroom with a walk-in shower and a tub shower combo, which, if you're traveling with kids, is actually a bigger deal than it sounds. Sleeps 5, slightly smaller footprint than Big Pine Key, but if having a kitchen set up or that split bathroom matters to you, that's the one to look at. Beyond studios, there are 1, 2, and 3 bedroom villas in the original building with full kitchens and in-villa washer and dryer, which, if you've ever tried to pack for a longer Disney trip, is information that changes your whole approach to a suitcase, and worth knowing regardless of which room category you book. If you're staying in any DVC villa, including the studios, complimentary laundry facilities are available on property. On a longer stay especially, that's a quiet little perk that adds up. Room rates do vary a lot across categories and seasons, so always check your specific dates, but knowing the difference between these two studio options before you book is going to save you the "wait, is this what I booked?" moment I had walking in the door. Which brings me to the actual math, because this is where DVC Rental Store comes in. I pulled pricing for resort studios like the one I stayed in across a few different times of year so you can see what the range actually looks like. Late August Resort View Disney Direct runs around $756 a night. Through DVC Rental Store, $378. Mid-December Theme Park View Disney Direct, $1,544. DVC Rental Store, $546. Mid-February Preferred View Disney Direct, $1,005. DVC Rental Store, $738. That range matters because it shows you this isn't a one-time deal. Across different seasons and different rooms, renting points consistently cuts the price significantly. And that's a big savings you could put toward park tickets, dining, or just making the rest of the trip feel a little less like you're doing math on vacation. They also offer payment plans and a cashback cancellation policy, which matters when you're spending this kind of money on a vacation. Full transparency, I'm an affiliate partner, so if you book through my link, I may earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. My own DVC contract came from DVC Resale Market, which is part of the same keyholder family as DVC Rental Store, and that's genuinely part of why this partnership made sense to me. But the bigger point is, if you've looked at Grand Floridian pricing and assumed a stay like this is out of reach, renting points is worth understanding. The link's in the description. The Grand Floridian has a lot going on beyond the main building, and I think it's worth a quick tour because some of it surprised me. There are actually 2 pools here. The beach pool is the main event. It overlooks the Seven Seas Lagoon, has a 181-foot water slide, waterfalls, and zero depth entry. The pool bar is called Beach's Pool Bar and Grill. Right next to it is the Alice in Wonderland aquatic play area for the little ones, complete with the Mad Hatter's hat that fills and dumps water. The second pool is the courtyard pool, tucked behind the main building, quieter and more relaxed. It's the one to know about if you actually want to sit by the water without feeling like you're in the middle of a pool party. There's also a spa and fitness center, which feels exactly right for a resort built around the idea of a leisurely vacation. The arcade is a good reminder that for all its polish, this is still a Disney resort. Families with kids are very much part of the picture here. And Basin is right there on the same floor as the Enchanted Rose, the monorail level, which is going to come up again in a minute. Transportation at the Grand Floridian is one of the things it genuinely does well. The monorail runs right through the resort. You're on the Magic Kingdom monorail loop, which means you can also hop over to the Contemporary and the Polynesian without touching a bus. That alone changes how a day at the park feels. We took the boat over to Magic Kingdom one evening, and it was a really lovely way to get there. Slow, scenic, and a completely different energy than rushing through a security line. It pulls right up to the dock and you're at the park. Highly recommend doing it at least once. There's also a walking path to Magic Kingdom. It's worth knowing about, though it's a longer walk than what you'd get from Bay Lake Tower. If you watch that episode, you know that the Bay Lake Tower walk is about as direct as it gets. The Grand Floridian path is pleasant, but it's not that. For most guests, the monorail or the boat is going to be the right call. And buses are available for the rest of Walt Disney World. Standard Disney bus service for everything beyond the monorail loop. Last night, we walked maybe 50 feet from our building and ended up watching Happily Ever After reflected across the Seven Seas Lagoon with tree frogs just going in the background. And honestly, moments Moments like this are where staying deluxe finally starts making emotional sense to me. I want to be specific about what that actually felt like, because Great Fireworks View doesn't really cover it. We didn't plan it. We didn't stake out a spot 2 hours early. We didn't fight a crowd. We just walked outside at the end of the night, and there it was, happily ever after, playing across the water, the music drifting over from Magic Kingdom, fireworks reflecting off the lagoon, and underneath it all, a symphony of tree frogs. That's the moment the value proposition of a deluxe resort stops being a concept and becomes something you actually feel. Not the room, not the lobby, not the chandelier, 50 feet from your building at the water's edge at the end of a Magic Kingdom night. And if you want to see what happily ever after looks like from just down the beach, from up inside the Polynesian Island Tower theme park view, that's exactly where this series is going next. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. We ate dinner at the Grand Floridian Café that first night and ended up going back for breakfast the next morning too, which tells you everything you need to know about how good it is. Here's the thing about the Grand Floridian Café that gets overlooked because of where it is. The prices are completely normal, comparable to what you'd pay for a brunch near your house. Not Victoria and Albert's, not Narcoossee's, just consistently great food and service, and a reservation that is almost always actually available. That last part matters more than people realize. A lot of the most talked about Disney restaurants require you to be at your computer at 6 a.m. exactly 60 days out. Grand Floridian Café is not that. It is the kind of place you can decide you want on a Tuesday and actually get. And if you want to skip restaurants entirely, room service was available here, which is actually not something you can say about most Disney resorts. We'll come back to that in a minute. But honestly, what I remember most about that dinner isn't the food. It's what I was watching through the window. Because what I was looking at wasn't a pretentious luxury hotel performing well. It was Disney performing a very specific fantasy. A romanticized turn-of-the-century seaside resort played completely straight, all the way down to the bellhops in their fancy bridges. Room service attendants in tuxedo-style shirts pushing carts along the resort paths. The whole resort just doing its thing outside the glass while we sat there eating dinner. And somewhere in the middle of that, I started actually looking into what this place was designed to be. The Grand Floridian is modeled after real Victorian-era seaside resorts. The Hotel Del Coronado in California, the Mount Washington Resort in New Hampshire, the Bellevue Biltmore right here in Florida. The red roofs, the white walls, the brick chimneys, all of it is referencing something real, a specific era of American leisure that most of us have only ever seen in old photographs. It didn't even open until 1988, nearly 17 years after Walt Disney World. The land it sits on was originally earmarked for an Asian-themed resort that never got built. So the Grand Floridian we know almost didn't exist at all. And once I understood what they were actually going for, once I stopped reading it as a fancy hotel trying to impress me and started reading it as Disney performing a very committed period piece, something shifted.
I think what surprised me most about the Grand Floridian is once I stopped looking at it like it was trying to impress me, I started really seeing the whimsy and Disney storytelling really built into the experience here at the resort. That made my perspective just kind of start to shift a little.
There's also the Garden View Tea Room, which offers afternoon tea in a setting that is exactly as elegant as it sounds. I didn't do the tea experience this trip, but if that appeals to you, it fits the Grand Floridian fantasy perfectly. And of course, there's Narcoossee's on the water, 1900 Park Fare for character dining, Citrico's, and Victoria and Albert's, which holds a Michelin star and the price tag to match if you're celebrating something significant and your budget is ready for that conversation. For a resort with this reputation, the range of dining options from Gasparilla Island Grill for a quick bite to a Michelin-starred restaurant is actually one of the things that makes it work for a lot of different kinds of trips.
I do think this resort might subtly encourage you to splurge a little between the shopping and the cocktails and the room service and the atmosphere. I think it makes you feel like this day should feel special. And honestly, I think that's part of the fantasy of the Grand Floridian.
That Enchanted Rose afternoon is actually a pretty good encapsulation of what the Grand Floridian is doing as a resort. Every property in this series creates a different emotional environment. Wilderness Lodge wraps you in atmosphere. It's cozy and immersive and feels like a retreat from everything, including the parks. Bay Lake Tower puts you at the center of the action, connected to Magic Kingdom in this very direct, kinetic way. The Grand Floridian does something different. It slows you down. It makes the trip itself feel like the occasion. Basin is right there on the monorail level. The Enchanted Rose is steps away. And then there's room service, the first resort in this series where I've seen it available. Delivered by cast members in tuxedo-style shirts pushing carts along the resort paths. It whispers consistently, maybe this is the trip where you treat yourself a little. And the environment is designed to make that feel completely reasonable. And once I stopped reading that as pretension and started reading it as the fantasy it's actually selling, a vacation that feels genuinely special, a little elevated, worth savoring, the whole resort started to make a lot more sense to me. The Grand Floridian isn't trying to intimidate you, it's trying to make you feel like the kind of person who deserves a really good trip.
don't think the Grand Floridian speaks my emotional language of Disney the same way that the Polynesian does, but after staying here, I do understand why so many people deeply love it. This resort creates a very specific type of Disney trip. It's slower, it's more elegant, celebratory, and surprisingly whimsical once you settle into it. And honestly, I think just changing my perspective changed the entire experience for me.
There's a moment in Mary Poppins Returns where Mary Poppins basically says, change where you're standing and everything looks different. I kept coming back to that during the stay. I want to know, is the Grand Floridian your Disney language, or is it a resort you admire from a distance the way I always did? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever had a place completely change your mind about itself, I want to hear about that too. The next resort in this series is the Polynesian, and I want to be upfront, this is going to be a little different for me to make. I've stayed at the Polynesian plenty of times. I already know it's going to be warm and relaxing and everything I love about it, but this will be my first time staying in the new island tower with a theme park view, and that part I genuinely don't know what to expect from yet. So if you want to see what happens when someone who already loves a resort stays in a version of it they've never experienced before, make sure you're subscribed. That one is coming up next. And a huge thank you to DVC Rental Store for sponsoring this video. The link to check rental pricing for resorts like this one is in the description. And if you've been curious about whether staying deluxe is actually within reach, that's the place to start looking. And if you want to dive even deeper into this resort, I've got a full write-up over at magicalmeanders.com. Thanks for meandering with me to Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa. I'll see you at the Polynesian.